Let me introduce myself. My name is Nathan. I've lived on Ivy Mills my family's lived on Ivy Mills for about 20 years, and I just wanted to do something because I really liked history. And turns out there's a lot of history related to the Ivy Mill and the Wilcoxes. So a couple named Thomas and Elizabeth Wilcox immigrated to the U.S. in Delaware, and they basically built their future house, a paper mill and a farm. They sat all this on Ivy Mills, and it's along the Chester Creek. You don't really hear about it that much during the Revolutionary War, how much significance the Wilcoxes did have during Revolutionary times, but they actually did. Thomas Wilcox had a son named Mark Wilcox, who was a judge at the time. Everyone called him Judge Wilcox. Basically, he was one of the judges that helped establish the new government for what we now know as the U.S. Actually, there's a fun fact. They printed more paper in here than anywhere else in the whole 13 colonies. Thomas Wilcox was a friend of Benjamin Franklin, and Benjamin Franklin actually used this paper mill as his printing shop for the Philadelphia Inquirer, which is the oldest newspaper establishment in the U.S. It's estimated that around 1732 Thomas Wilcox came around here, but the earliest documentations of them was in the St. John's Church fire that happened, and the documentation got destroyed. St. John's still does hold documentation in that room, old documentation, which is really cool. I think you should look at. Thomas Wilcox had 9 kids before passing in 1979. His one son that chose to stay at the paper mill was Mark Wilcox. His name was Mark Wilcox. He spent his early life studying law, and Mark Wilcox even created a law firm called Flahaven and Wilcox, I believe. That was in Philly. He always lived in Philly and then came down here to come visit, to work on the property, and always helped around. When the Revolutionary War came knocking on America's door, they needed to figure out a currency that all the states could use. That would later happen from all the hands of the Wilcox family. From Massachusetts to the Carolinas, the Wilcoxes made all the currency for all the states in between. But that wasn't it for them. They even made some of the paper the government used to sign bills. He would get recommended by government officials, saying that he should travel with his deliveries with militiamen because it was so valuable, his newspaper and his business. And it was actually really funny because they advised him to be so secret about his business, which is hard because you're making the money for, the whole country. Make the paper for the money to unite all the 13 colonies. They made the paper for the founding fathers to sign the bills, and they made money for North and South American countries, and even some countries in Europe, I believe, too. Mark Wilcox is now the last Wilcox to live on Ivy Mill, and I was actually going to go interview him for this documentary, but he came down with a cold, and I can't do it in time for this interview, so, yeah. The Wilcox family has cemented their impact as one of the most influential yet unknown families ever in American history. Sparking the paper mill boom in not just only Pennsylvania, but in all of Americas, they have a lot of influence and significance in American history. The Wilcoxes didn't only just print paper, they were also one of the oldest Catholic families in Pennsylvania. They would often also host masses at Fort St. Mary's Chapel. On Polecat Road, where it intersects with Ivy Mills Road, sits the Wilcox Mansion in the ruins of the Ivy Mill. My family has lived on Ivy Mills for over 20 plus years, and growing up I always walked down to the same creek the mill runs on, just to hang out and just to acknowledge and appreciate all the nature that's nearby. I used it kind of to escape the world, to be honest, as well. When the world became too much for me, I kind of used it as a way of escaping. The peaceful nature and beauty of the area the mill sat on helped me reflect on not just myself, but how I appreciate things that's always been in front of my eyes my whole life. I chose to make a documentary about a paper mill because I've lived here my whole life. It sounds pretty boring to talk about a paper mill, but the paper mill kind of was the reason we are the country we are, kind of like metaphorically and literally and figuratively and all that. They made the paper for us to sign the bills that gave us constitutional rights, made the paper for us to buy stuff. They made the paper for the bills that we signed to give us constitutional rights. They gave us everything. The reason I feel like also, this is just a personal hot take. Personal hot take. Personal hot take alert. The reason the presidents are Benjamin Franklin and George Washington is the 101 is because of their connection to the Wilcoxes. I'm gonna drop it right there. I'm leaving it right there.